Thank you, Joshua, for the introductions. It's lovely to connect with all you people on this Sunday evening via the virtual platform. I truly applaud Tati for championing such interesting, relevant sessions while we are all locked down at our homes, bringing this content to the luxury of our homes. Today, we have a very relevant topic, electric vehicles, a topic which is very close to me because as Joshua was mentioning, I work for Renault Nissan, and this is one of our core strategies to bring in EVs to the market. And so I'm excited because we talk about this every single day at workplace. This is part of our core strategy, as I mentioned. Before we get into the electric vehicles part of it, let's take a few moments to look at what's moving the auto industry. Technology and new business models are bringing in disruptive changes. When I say disruptive, positively disrupting the industry, right? The concept of car ownership has got a new dimension with shared mobility. The professionally managed fleets will reduce the cost of mobility through more efficient use of expensive mobile assets. We are all beneficiaries. The Ola and the Ubers are integral part of our lives today. So this is not something which is happening in the Western world. The shared mobility is reality in India as well. Coming to autonomous driving, when this becomes a reality, we will all become permanent backseat drivers. The development of these vehicles with no human intervention heavily relies on the application of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms. A lot of OEMs are investing much of their energies in this space because this is expected to make driving more accessible, cheaper, safer, and easier in the days to come. Connected Car Program, a program which I'm personally very involved at Renault Nissan, talks about communication, has two flavors. One, the communication between the cars and the external systems, and the communication between the vehicle occupants and the outside world. There are umpteen number of use cases which we are using today, which we are applying and building. Very, very simple things like cars which can self-correct. Like for example, if the tire pressure of the car is hitting to a threshold, then today the car is intelligent enough to book an appointment with your most preferred car service provider. Similarly, with geofencing, families are able to look at where the children are going or moving around in the city, young drivers. We have had use cases where buddies who are on a road trip can share the GPS maps to colleagues and other friends so that they're all looking at the same maps. So the number of use cases that the connected car brings to us is going to completely enhance the end user experience. The car of the future will really become a third place after our home and our workplace, right? So this is something which is already there. In fact, many of our Renault and Nissan cars have very advanced features of connected cars enabled on them. And then if you come to the topic of the day, towards a greener earth, the electric vehicles, how does it look? It took 5 years to sell the first million electric cars. And in 2018, it took about 6 months. And then came 2019, and in 1 year, 2.1 million electric cars were sold globally. That's a huge jump, and this is a jump which just tells the relevance of this car in the world, the importance that the OEMs are giving to building and changing the focus from traditional gasoline and diesel cars to the electric cars, and the thrust which the governments and the authorities are bringing to make these cars more viable to the people, right? So if you look at how the world is using this space, the electric car space, it's very interesting to see that the Nordic region leads the electric car adoption, right? Statistics which have come at the end of the first half of the year say pure electric cars made up almost half the car sales in Norway, in a world record, as battery-powered vehicles suffer less than fossil fueled rivals during the economic downturn caused by the COVID-19. France and UK already have plans to stop all the production of petrol and diesel cars by 2040. Denmark and Sweden have more electric car charging docks than petrol booths, and they have released more huge exemptions for vehicle taxes for electric cars. Not just the government and the authorities, car makers, the OEMs are coming together. Renault, Nissan, and big players like Volkswagen are pledging on the table billions of dollars to invest in zero emission vehicles by 2030 and beyond. So you will see the world is really gearing up for a, for a motorway which is only driven by electric cars, right? So on this note, before I go further into the Indian market, I have to talk about some of our flagship products, right? Today, one in every car, every electric car that is driven in Europe is a Renault car. And I work for Renault and Nissan, which is an alliance together. And not just 1 in 4 being a Renault Zoe car. There's a huge, very interesting lineup of electric vehicles which Renault brings to the table, namely the Master, which is a van, the Kangoo, which is a semi SUV, we have Zoe, and we have Twizy, which is the fully battery electric vehicle. And not just on the Renault front, if you look at Nissan, Nissan's Leaf, which is our flagship electric vehicle from the Nissan world, is the world's all-time best-selling highway-capable all-electric car. This is the world's most sold electric car in 2019. Very proud to say that this comes from our shop. And not just this, we have a huge lineup of electric cars which are very popular. Mitsubishi, which is part of our alliance, has Outlander, which is an SUV. We have Ariya, which will actually soon hit the Indian market as well. And of course, the Leaf. So these are some of the offerings from the Nissan, Renault, and Mitsubishi Alliance family, which are very popular. We have been in the business of building and selling electric cars for more than a decade now. There is a continuous focus, as I said, on 3 elements at the alliance. One is the electric cars, second is autonomous driving, and the third is the connected vehicles. So today, if we are talking of the connected vehicles, let's see what's happening in the Indian context, right? India, being the world's fastest and the largest growing economy, is facing a plethora of risks associated with rapid urbanization. The private ownership of cars have skyrocketed in the past 2 decades, leading to a huge increase in air pollution level, congestion, and a huge dependence on fossil fuels. A recent study has estimated, a study by WHO, which was published in January of this year, said that 74,000 premature deaths have been attributed to air pollution from transportation tailpipe emissions in India. As the number of motor vehicles on the roads double every 8 to 10 years, the CO2 emissions are bound to get worse, right? We really don't want these fancy titles being Delhi being India's asthma capital or the 15 countries in the world's most polluted cities coming from India. These are not something that we want to be proud of. We've all heard of all these hardships that the Delhi citizens had to go through with the smog. The pictures that you see are definitely not pictures where people are wearing masks because of COVID-19. These are pictures taken much earlier. They were wearing these masks to protect themselves from the pollution and the smog. Schools were shut down. There were inconvenience to commuters because they were alternate day odd numbered cars on one day and even numbered cars on another day. So we saw a plethora of environmental issues coming because of pollution. And without a doubt, the primary source for all this pollution is vehicles, right? And we know that. Vehicles are one of the contributors to air pollution, and there is, we are at a point of threshold where vehicular emissions have to be monitored and controlled. And recognizing this, the Indian government and the auto OEMs in India have been continuously working towards defining guidelines for optimal fuel economy and for regulations for emissions from the cars on the streets, right? And towards this, we had the BS4, and today every company is trying hard to be compliant to BS6. And every OEM, in fact, is almost distracted from introducing new models to become BS6 compliant. So that is the stress that this has put on the existing OEMs in India. I can say this for sure because from Renault and Nissan perspective as well, the BS6 compliance has been on the forefront of all the initiatives that we're doing in India. And to be compliant, the OEMs are putting a lot of efforts, right? Many solutions, many technology-driven solutions like the three-way catalytic converters, the advanced calibration techniques, the gasoline particulate filters, all these initiatives to control emissions, right? And if you will see this diagram, this is not controlled at 100%. We still have a significant amount of emissions that are coming out, but to get to this extent, the OEMs are paying a big price, right? This is almost putting a risk on their existence, right? In fact, there are many OEMs who are even wondering whether BS6 compliant makes sense from a financial perspective, because the margins are very slim, and the fines that the OEMs have to pay if they are not compliant to BS6, and if they don't have the regulations adhered to, it's going to make their margins even slimmer, right? And this is having a huge impact on the diesel and commercial vehicles. And diesel and commercial vehicles will see a drastic cost increase if they have to be compliant to BS6, which means the customers will pay more as well, right? So if this being the situation, India looks, there's another aspect to it, right? The fuel, the fossil fuels, the source of all of this is imported, right? India exports enormous amount of crude oil, which is the fundamental raw material for all our petrol and gasoline. And India has tall aims to cut its oil import bill by roughly half by 2030. This is on the Indian national agenda. So the government has time and again has been very vocal about its intent to move all its vehicles to run on electricity by 2030 and beyond. It might take longer, but at least the intent is very, very clear. And not just the Indian government and the authorities and the experts are saying that. In the last few months, while the world is battling the COVID-19 pandemic, a study by the Harvard University found a striking association between long-term exposure to harmful fine particulate matter and COVID-19 mortality, right? And one of the primary causes for fine particulate matter pollution is the combustion from gasoline and diesel car engines. So the need is really urgent, and going electric is the only way forward for India. And if you look at the statistics, we saw some of the world statistics, but if you look at the Indian statistics, at present, the EV market penetration is just about 1% of the total vehicle sales in India. And in that 1%, 95% are electric two-wheelers. So you can understand how low the market cap for electric cars in India is. Right. The National Mission for Electric Mobility, a program which was launched by the Government of India, lays the vision and provides a roadmap for achieving significant penetration of efficient and environmental friendly electric vehicles, right? So this is not just the government. As I said, all OEMs are coming together to make sure that this vision, this intent of Government of India is becoming a reality. And so as you said, I speak on behalf of Renault Nissan, but every single OEM is focusing on a good lineup of electric cars, is partnering, is investing on research and development to make sure that the country has a good infrastructure. The end users have it's viable for the end users to buy electric cars. It's feasible from the electricity perspective. So all the elements of it is studied by this NMEM grant plan, and the government is very actively working on this. So very clear, we have to go electric. There's absolutely no two doubts about it. So if that is being the case, so maybe we will spend some time to understand what this electric car is all about, because many of us probably have not seen one or not been in one. So it's probably interesting to spend some time to understand what an electric car is all about. So we are very familiar with the combustion engine, the ICEs as they call it. It runs on petrol or diesel, and in the recent past we had the gas engines, not so popular, but we still have them around. But petrol and diesel is what drives the combustion engines. We are very familiar with them. But when you talk of a battery electric vehicle, BEVs as they are calling it, in its simplest form, in a BEV, instead of a fuel tank, we have an onboard battery that gets charged through an electric supply, and then it stores and uses the energy to power an electric motor and sets the wheel in motion. So this is probably the simplistic definition someone can give for a BEV. It means that cars have no need for a clutch and a gearbox or an exhaust pipe for that matter, and it makes the ride much smoother and even much quieter, right? The propulsion is basically exclusively on the electrical energy stored in the high voltage batteries. There is a lot of challenges that when the first battery electric vehicles were launched, there were a lot of challenges when the entire dependency was on batteries, and that is when the hybrid electric vehicles came into existence, right? And what does a hybrid vehicle do? The hybrids combine a gasoline or a diesel engine with an electric motor and a large rechargeable battery. So it brings in the best of gasoline and diesel vehicles along with the power of a battery electric vehicle. These are the hybrid cars, right? The degree of electrification depends on the size and characteristics of the batteries and the electric machines. If you look at the players on the battery electric vehicle space, we have Tesla, we have our Renault's Twizy. These are some of the popular pure BEVs. But when you look at the hybrid cars, Toyota leads the pack. Toyota has some of the most interesting lineup of the HEVs, as they call it, whereas the Leaf, the Twizy, and the Tesla are all BEVs. It's interesting because I was in another program where we presented the BEVs and the electric cars, and a very interesting insight came there. The electric motors have an instant torque right from the first RPM, unlike the petrol or the diesel engines, where the engines have to rev up to a few thousand RPM for that matter, and then you get the surge or the punch. For motorsport lovers in this group, you can't ask for anything better. Acceleration is as fast as a Porsche Boxster, the sports car. So these cars score extremely high when it comes to acceleration. Because of the few movable parts, the maintenance costs are lower than the regular petrol or the diesel cars, and they make much less noise. They are very quieter. It's a double-edged sword. The quieter cars are welcomed by many. In fact, one of the occasions when I happened to ride a Nissan Leaf while I was traveling abroad, you don't even feel the car moving. Right? It's that silent. And even when you accelerate it, you brake, nothing, I mean, there's absolutely zero noise. So as I said, it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes when the car is running in such a silent mode, there are people who are almost raising their hands and saying that's not safe for the pedestrians and fellow drivers. A car has to make a minimal sound. In fact, now there are new regulations which are coming to have some sound generated even by the electric cars. Imagine a country like India. I mean, in the West, people don't use horns so insensitively as in India, so which means the noise of the car probably alerts pedestrians here and there. But in India, this is something which we have to really think about, whether such silent cars would be welcomed by our society, right? So this is the context of cars, the electric cars, the battery electric vehicles, and the hybrid electric vehicles that we talk about. So here I have a very small illustration, an illustration which talks about how the combination of electric motors and the electricity generators, the batteries and the engines work together when the car is in motion, a very small simulation. So if you will see, when you start driving at a constant speed, the car only uses the motor. The electricity from the battery drives the motor, which reaches this full potential instantly. As I said, the torque is instant as soon as the motor starts running, the electric motor. But when imagine a scenario when we're going a small uphill and there is a higher acceleration. Here, in addition to normal driving, the battery supplies electricity to drive the motor, enhancing the driving power, right? So this is how hybrid vehicles use a combination of the ICE and the electric motor to do higher acceleration in higher altitudes. And when you're deaccelerating or when you're braking, this is called actually regenerative braking in the electric vehicle world. The motor is activated as a generator to convert the moving vehicle's energy into electricity and charge the battery. So the car, as it is driving, has the potential to recharge its battery, right? And then when you're back to the normal mode, there's rationalization between all the three components. And when you are stopping, the engine automatically cuts out. So there's no idling, thereby the CO2 emissions even during the idling in a hybrid vehicle is absolutely near minimal. So this is a very simple illustration of how the combination of the battery operated electric motor and the electricity generation happens inside a hybrid car. While all of this looks good, what are the challenges for a country like India when it comes to adopting electric vehicles, right? The challenges are quite significant. The first or the biggest concern for most of us would be the range of a battery. It could be anything between, say, 200 to 300 or 400 kilometers. But what if I'm touring? If I'm driving from Chennai to Hyderabad, say a distance of 650 odd kilometers, I cannot sit for 4-5 hours waiting for the battery to get recharged if I'm driving a BEV, right? So this is a concern which genuinely people have, and this is directly linked to the charging infrastructure in the country. While conventional vehicles have, because today we are very confident that when you're doing a road trip, you have adequate number of fuel refueling stations, the petrol stations and the diesel stations. The same cannot be said of electric charging station in India, at least today. In fact, there was one statistics which said that today in India, we have about 650 charging stations. At the same time, China has about 450,000 charging stations across the country. So that is how ready China is today when it comes to EV adoption and how far away we are when it comes to charging infrastructure for the electric cars. So this is one of the biggest challenges. The next is on the battery itself, right, which is the core component of the electric car. There are three parts to battery production: the battery packing, the battery pack development, as they call it, the cell manufacturing, and the third is the raw material, the lithium, the cobalt, manganese, or nickel. There are varieties of raw materials that are used in the batteries that are used in the cars. Today, India heavily relies on China for all its needs. And this is also one of the reasons why EVs are priced more than the regular cars, right? The key concern here is the pricing, right? And the dependency on, especially on China for making these components. So if India has to completely shift gears from standard cars, the petrol and the diesel cars, to the electric cars, then a lot of people in the auto sector are going to lose their employments. So if traditional internal combustion engines based vehicle is going away, we will have a huge crisis with many losing jobs. So the only way we will continue to have jobs and keep this business running is to start making every subsystem of the electric vehicles in India. We have to beat China both on the performance and on the price. Right. So many OEMs are, that's why I said, are investing on research and development in this space. At Renault Nissan, we have a huge partnership with IIT Madras for the electric vehicle research and development. We have made some very interesting progress in the lithium battery design and packaging. In fact, we have a few patents to our credit, and as I said, unless there is investment on this end, there is support and a lot of subsidies and rebates from the government to research and develop this front, it's going to be a very expensive proposition for users to buy electric cars in India and to bring state-of-the-art technologies for our Indian population. Then, Indians are very famously value conscious. Why do I say that? Even today, when you go out to buy cars, the reason why people prefer diesel cars are they are most cost effective compared to petrol cars. An EV car costs at least 1.5 to 2.5x times its ICE equivalent. So the value, the pricing of the EV is also something which is not very compelling for the average Indian user to buy an EV car today. Last but very importantly is the electricity supply in parts of the country. The grid infrastructure today sometimes is even inadequate to meet our basic demands as for the general population, right? So now you switch and you say if India has to supply electricity for all the electric vehicles, so there has to be a completely different orientation to electricity generation in India. Again, the power source is coal. India generates a majority, about 65% of its energy demand through coal. And then this by itself can become a pollution deterrent, right? And a variable in the pollution element, which is not something that India looks forward to. So we have to really look at alternate sources of electricity supply and make sure that this is something which gets the maximum attention from the government of India to ensure that electric vehicles have the highest amount of sponsorship. Today, many industry partners like EV Motors, Magneta Power, Altagrid, ABB are coming forward to build charging infrastructure in partnership with the government of India. So these are some of our partners with whom we work very effectively. In fact, recently in one of the podcasts, I heard that one of the senior executives at Maruti saying that there is no way an average Indian can charge the vehicle, because today they don't even have their own dedicated parking spaces. So if in the US and in the western parts of the world and in Europe, pretty much people are able to charge their cars just the way we would charge our mobile phones. They would come home in the evening, plug in their car to their sockets, and then the car gets charged overnight. So today in India, given our limited availability of parking slots and at homes and for large apartment complexes, we have to really rethink this entire landscape as to how individuals would charge their cars. So these are all the challenges that are lying ahead of us, and unless the government and the OEMs together look at these challenges and have a very clear strategy, this is going to be a big adoption disabler for us in the coming years. While I talk about these challenges, we also have to admit that the same space is also seeing a plethora of innovations, right? A solar powered electric car that runs without the need for charging may sound impossible today, but that's exactly what OEMs like Toyota are experimenting, right? By pairing together the best solar panels in the market with the most efficient batteries available, the hope is to have a car that will run forever without the need to get charged through solar, of course, being enabled by the solar power itself, right? The other concept which is fast picking up today is really called the fast charging, using technologies wherein 80% of the battery can be charged in less than 15 minutes. So this is already being tested, piloted in many countries, and we have some cars which actually have the fast charging features. And in fact, I even heard that some of the cars that Honda is bringing to India will have batteries which have this feature. The last is the battery improvisations, right? With the trend of lithium-ion battery cathodes being improved continuously, the cost of batteries is significantly coming down. As I said, in a battery electric vehicle, the batteries and the electric motors is what is hiking up the prices. So the focus of the battery and bringing it at a cost-effective price is something which all the OEMs are focusing on, and this has seen a big positive trajectory in the recent past. Battery prices alone have decreased 80% since 2010, with the hopes of dropping another 45% in the next few years. So it's not very grim. People are continuously looking at how can we improve and innovate in the electric car space so that this can be made readily available, can be afforded by everyone, and can be seen as a most sought after vehicle on the streets, right? On that note, there's a lot to look out for in the coming years. I recently read that there are 16 new cars, electric cars, which we can look out for in India, which includes our Nissan Leaf and Renault's Kwid electric in the small car segment. So if successful, the shift to electric vehicles could potentially help India save about $300 billion, which is about 20 lakh crores in oil exports and nearly 1 gigaton of carbon dioxide emissions by 2030. Yes, India needs to be flooded by electric cars in the coming years. And with the right kind of support, this can become a reality. Renault has, as I said, a tall plan. Our future plan for the next decade is called Drive the Future Plan, and 12 new models, all electric cars, are part of our product pipeline, as in the case of Nissan, which has got about 8 cars in the pipeline. not only introducing electric cars, using the connected car platform, they are connecting the electric cars and the connected car platform, so where users can obtain charging information in real time or control operations from a distance with their smartphones to get to the nearest charging station. So they are making it as appealing as it can to the car buyers and the fleet users. So electric vehicles are the future of motoring. I would like to end my session with this quote by Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, who said, "We will not stop until every car on the road is electric." So on that note, thank you very much. And I was very happy to share these insights with the group and also share with you some of the cars that are in the pipeline in the Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi family in the electric car space. And one day we will all be driving electric cars, and we will make the place greener and healthier for our future generations. So on that note, thank you very much, Joshua and Tati team, for giving me this opportunity. And if you have any
thank you very much,
questions, I would be more than happy.
Yeah, there are a couple of quick questions from our participants. Shall we go ahead, ma'am?
Yes, please.
The price of electric vehicles is quite high when compared to a normal car. Do you think this will change in the near future?
Yes.
And another question by the same participant: how safe is electric vehicles?
Okay. First question, I did say the electric cars today are at least 1.5 to 2.5 times expensive than the regular petrol and the diesel cars. And there is a lot of, one primarily because in India at least, it is because many of the parts are imported. The tax levies are expensive, the batteries are very expensive, and the research that is going into the space to build them locally, to build cost-effective batteries is what is getting the maximum focus. The cost of batteries used in electric vehicles have already been dipped by 85%. And with all of this, as I said, unless the prices are slashed, India is not going to be surged with electric cars. So I foresee a huge decline of electric price vehicles in the coming years, so that the adoption is increasing. The government, as a part of this national mobility plan, is already studying the space, and we will see the prices coming down. The second is on the electric cars. Yes, there were few accidents, and those were when the cars went up in flames. We've had some cases that were reported in some of the electric vehicles. So this is something which we have acknowledged in the past, that cars have been prone to this. But this is not unique. We have also seen this in in petrol and diesel cars. But this aspect of it, the battery which can go up in flames, is also being studied. So that is why the amount of research and R&D initiatives in the battery life cycle management, as we call it, is absolutely important. While we say it's a zero maintenance car, the amount of time it takes to build the battery and design a battery is huge, right? And that is the only component which is prone to such accidents, and that gets maximum attention. So this, all the research and R&D is focused on building safer batteries.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question, ma'am. Do you think retrofitting for a normal car, whether normal car can be retrofitted with electric engines, and is it possible, ma'am?
This is something which we threw as a challenge for at Renault Nissan. When, as I said, the hybrid cars are running the battery operated component electric motor alongside the standard ICEs, and we have not seen much success. So it is not that you take a car and you can convert into a hybrid. So the entire engine positioning, the powertrain components, everything had to be redone when it had to be made into a hybrid car, right? So as we say, again, people are studying it so that the cost of conversion, the cost of production of such cars is also coming down. But as we speak, to my knowledge, it is not that today by fitting a gas engine at the back of your car, you're able to run it on gas. So it is not like that. People have not seen success in that front. But this is something, again, people are really studying hard to see if a conversion or an upgrade is possible. To my knowledge, it's not there.
One last question, ma'am. Is your organization planning to build any electric vehicle production plant to start? Is it already there, or will you start electric vehicle production in India, ma'am?
We do have the, as I said, the Kwid Electric, which will come out. I mean, again, this year has been a bad year for the auto sector in India. So a lot of delays. The production has been shut down for many months. So this is not just Renault, Nissan. Every one of them have had to take the beating because of the pandemic situation. The Kwid electric vehicle, which will hit the market, will be completely built in India. So the plant in Oragadam, the Renault Nissan plant in Oragadam in Chennai, is fully equipped to build electric cars. In fact, we already build a lot of electric car components which are exported, but for the Indian market, the car will be built in India. Absolutely.
Ma'am, on behalf of our institutions and all the participants, I would like to thank you and sincere gratitude to you for spending your valuable time with us this evening, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you all. It was an absolute pleasure.